It is 7 o'clock. So let's rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It is Thursday, May 27th, 7 p.m. This is a regular meeting of the Grand Rapids County Road Commission. Going to call the roll, please.
Neiman.
Here.
Underwood.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Gilman.
Here.
Mauser.
Here. We need a motion for approval of agenda or addition or modifications.
Move that we approve the agenda with the addition of blue sheet items L and M.
Second. We have motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. It's a roll call. Yeah. Okay, give it a roll call. If you call the roll, please.
Underwood.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Gilman.
Yes.
Neiman.
Yes.
Mauser.
Yes. Anyone have a conflict of interest or statement which they would wish to make public at this time? Hearing none. Brings us to our first public comment. If clerk would read the rules of public comment.
Any person may make an advanced appointment with the board regarding road commission topics for a regular or special meeting in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. If an appointment is made, the topic will be an agenda item. The following applies to public comments. Please state his or her name and address. Topic must be relevant to the road commission. Individuals are allowed to speak once for up to 3 minutes on a single topic, which may be extended by the chair. A group addressing the board requires a designated spokesperson who may speak up to 10 minutes. The board will not act on any item from the public that is not on the agenda. For remote access users, if you wish to participate in public comment, please raise your hand through Zoom. For call-ins, we will unmute you. If you wish to speak, say yes.
Okay, is there anyone present who would wish to take advantage of the first public comment? You do so, I guess you need to step forward to the podium.
Refill out one of those cards also. When you're done.
Okay. My name is Randy Close. I live at 15115 Bluff Road. And I just wanted to take a minute here to make a comment. Since there are items on the agenda tonight concerning Bluff Road, I live north of the barriers on Bluff Road. In those areas, we had last summer, we had in front of my house, we had a couple sinkholes that opened up and were repaired. And there are several issues from a stability standpoint that we want to, make everybody aware of. Several homeowners on that end of Bluff Road have completed or are completing shoreline stabilization projects, including myself. Just finished up one this week. This addresses the instability for the toe of the hill, but still doesn't address right-of-way instability, which there is. There's several spots between the North Road closure sign and Bursaw Road where the hillside has got some stability issues. And we had a couple members of the road commission out. Wayne was there last year and a couple of the supervisors. And we walked through those and had meetings and they saw those things. So, but I'm not aware if anyone on the board actually got a chance to see that and know what the conditions are there. So that's why I'm here. I wanted to make this group aware of what the conditions are there, and they are similar to what's going on at Mission Hill, only not, to that state yet. There's several locations there where there's instability, slope instability, some places where it's starting to cut back towards the road in the right of way. And last year we were told by people from, the road commission that that area would be monitored and, just taking, people keeping an eye on it to make sure that nothing happens. But we do have concerns along that area, because if we do have, a catastrophic change, we've got houses there that need egress in and out, and emergency services access that we're concerned about. So we did have a meeting with the Peninsula Township Fire Chief last year, and he has advised his crews not to drive fire trucks on the water side, in the water side, the lane on the water side of the road. So because of the conditions there and the weight of his vehicles. And that letter should be on file with the commission. What I would like to just bring up here is we're trying to be proactive about this area. The areas that are existing now that are of concern are relatively small, and we think, could be taken care of without a lot of cost at this point. But we'd like to be proactive and make sure that they don't, advance towards the road and put that asset into danger and cause concern. So my suggestion would be is if we could have a inspection and maintenance program or plan developed, so that homeowners along that area would know what to expect, and there would be, a plan and an inspection schedule along that route, so that we could actually take care of a situation before it gets, too bad and too expensive to repair. So that's basically, the thought that I wanted to put out today, and just make you aware of, there are issues north of what you're going to talk about tonight that people have concerns on. So that's just what I had to say.
How far north of our closure?
Am I?
Yeah.
I'm probably less than a quarter mile. So.
I think we saw a couple of the hands in the audience. Is there anyone present who would wish to speak as well? Yeah. Coach Brody, name and address.
My name is Ron Peterson. I live at 14788, excuse me, Mallard Drive. But my wife and I own a separate parcel of property on the east side of Bluff Road that's within the barricaded area right now. We've begun looking into what it's going to cost us to remediate our portion of that property, and for individuals, it's quite a big nut to bite off. I'm here primarily tonight to hear the GEI report and the reaction to it, and walk away with a feeling for what the road commission is thinking about doing at this point in time. I think we've been pretty patient. It's going on a couple of years now where we haven't had access to our property. I did express concerns when we had the meeting down at the site. Unfortunately, those concerns all still exist, but I'd like to walk away tonight with a better feeling that there's a plan in place, or will soon be a plan in place that we can respond to from our side. Thank you.
Any other audience members? Okay.
Brian Hefner, 14772 Mallard Drive. I, as well as Mr. Peterson, reside within the Mission Hills Association. However, my wife and I also own a separate parcel on the water side, separate from the HOA beach area. Kind of the same concerns. The board was gracious enough to come out and meet with us in person and walk through the lots and look at those areas. And since then, we've talked to subcontractors, walked the beach, walked the road. And the problem really lies into any remediation that I would do down on our 150 feet of beach. Would really have to be in cooperation with the road commission, because there's such a fine line between our property line and then the stabilization of that bank that the road easement is on. And I had hoped that there would have been some clarity as far as some type of either a working relationship or a plan, and whatever the outcome will be. I would just like to see something that we can work towards an end goal and work together on. So thank you for your time.
Anyone else in the audience? Is there anyone online that has expressed?
Yes, we have a Tracy Bartlett. Okay, Tracy, you can talk.
Hello, this is Tracy Bartlett. My address is 1623 Carlisle Farms Drive. I'm actually just wanting to make comment on a couple of the items that you have on the agenda, the SAD for Timber Hills and the roundabout at 4 Mile and Hammond. Just want to express our gratitude from the township for working with the road commission. We've enjoyed working with Joe in particular, Joe Solanecki. He's been very helpful with the special assessment, and we just appreciate your partnership with it and working on both of those projects with the township. Thank you.
Another online,
I don't see any.
You got two phones you have to.
Oh. Let's see. Oh, ask to unmute. Okay. I don't know if they're not on you. 198-985-93174. You can.
I have
speak.
no comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all we got.
But it was an 8, there was one more phone number.
There you go.
Was it there, the 888 one?
8844. Who's disappearing on me?
Okay.
You can speak now.
okay, so that,
That does it.
that's it?
Yep.
Okay. We have some action items. We have 3 appointments, I guess. And we're scheduled for 7:05, I guess, with our slip past that just a little bit. So if individuals here, 7:05. Taylor, Meadow Lane Drive.
No, they're not.
They're here online.
Okay.
I don't see the name. The only thing I see is the couple numbers there.
Okay,
Well, if they do show up, I guess we'll squeeze them in. 7:15 schedule was Doug Mansfield and Minton.
Good evening, everyone. Doug Mansfield, Mansfield Land Use Consultants, 830 Cottage View Drive, Suite 201, Traverse City, Michigan. I'm going to hand out to the Road Commission excerpts from, pass those around, from the 62-page packet that we submitted a couple months ago regarding this project, which is located on the southeast corner of Town Line and South Airport Road in East Bay Township. I'll go through, I'll try to keep this short as I know I only have a certain amount of time. On the top of this, you'll see a memorandum, and I'm going to go through that. On or about May 23rd, 2017, the owner, Dave Lumba, purchased the subject property. It's about 3.5 acres, again, located at the southeast corner of Town Line and Hammond in East Bay Township. The property was zoned previously to the purchase and is currently zoned AS, Airport Service. The parcel zoned AS by the township create 440 feet of frontage on South Airport Road. On or about November 2018, the owner retained a professional engineer to design and permit a mixed-use development on the subject parcel. Through that design and permitting process, that engineer pursued preliminary approval of the site access. He received the same from the road commission permit agent, and the short email, which took about 4 months to get, and is in the packet. Through this approval, there were no defined concerns, variances, conditions outlined or implied by the agent of the road commission. The owner, for reasons outside the context of this memorandum, pulled the application and hired another professional firm to continue the process pursuant to approval. The owner and new design firm relied on the preliminary approval of the road commission. In and during the period of redesign and permitting, the land use proposal did not change. The location of the proposed driveway access points did not change. No policy, rule, or specification of the road commission changed in that period. The permitting agent for the road commission changed. On or about April 17th, 2020, pursuant to the permitting process for the new firm submits once again for preliminary approval from the road commission. The road commission provided review comments to the applicant. The list involved now is long and involved and includes mitigation of physical issues with the existing road, includes drainage issues, desired shoulder and curb improvements. But two issues arose which, while they may be provided as guidelines or rules of the road commission, took the development team by surprise and were never discussed in the previous preliminary approval. The first issue is that the road commission staff has taken the stance that the distance from the intersection of Town Line and South Airport Road to the proposed driveway is not sufficient. The guidelines referenced in the standards and specifications suggest a 460-foot distance from the fillet or the east side of Town Line Road to our driveway distance sideline. The subject property only has the width of 325 feet. In fact, all of the overlay zone property together, that being airport service adjacent to South Airport Road, would not meet this requirement. The road commission staff has taken the same position on the subject parcel as it fronts on Town Line Road. Now the road commission staff has stated that it would be accept a right in and right out only driveway approach on the South Airport Road, and while not preferable on previously restricted, the owners is accepted to that. On Town Line Road, the road commission staff has provided a waiver of the distance guideline for a full driveway approach. The second issue is the rule 11.15 right-of-way requirements in your guidelines, where the developments are, where item B, where developments are adjacent to public roadways, right-of-way widths of 1.5 to right-of-way width shall be described and dedicated to the Grand Traverse County Road Commission. In this instance, it would mean the owner would have to get 42 more feet of right-of-way for a total of 75 feet. The issue in doing that, as I go into the next paragraph, is that in East Bay Township, side or setbacks start from the right-of-way, but if it's easement, that doesn't add more setbacks. So right-of-way and easements, I want you to understand that. The owner's agents revised and updated the plan to encompass the mitigation of every item the road commission staff reviewed, except the extra right-of-way. The plans exhibited that the owner would provide an easement of 17 feet, which would be dedicated to the road commission and provide sufficient area for the road surface improvements, drainage, utilities, and sidewalk. The owner's agents asked the road commission staff if there was any other immediate improvements envisioned, and they were told there was not. But the road commission staff did say that without the right-of-way donation or waiver therefrom, they could not permit the project. That email is also included. So I'm going to go through again some of the primary elements of the exhibits that were given to you a couple months ago. The first one is from an email from Todd Bentley, the then permit agent for the road commission, to Jeff Cockfield, the then engineer. Please note, and of course it's an email, so you got to read it backwards. I am following up with you yet again to request feedback from the road commission for a project I submitted to you back in October of 2018. The date of the answer is February 15th, 2019. Sorry if I seem frustrated, but I requested comments on several occasions: 10/31/18, 11/14/18, 11/27/18, and 12/20/18, and have yet to hear anything. Mr. Bentley's answer to this: I am so sorry. I thought I sent you something back. Grand Traverse County Road Commission believes that your site plan looks to work just fine. Sorry again for the delay. Have a great weekend. The second page is the example, or it's the plan at that time as it was presented to East Bay Township and the Road Commission. This would show with north facing off into the pages you have in your packet, the Town Line driveway approach to the east, and then the South Airport also being the farthest east point of the property. It was a mixed-use development with multifamily and commercial. As we move through the dates, and when we, Mansfield, prepared the plans, we then submitted it to the permitting people, and we noticed to them, please review this pursuant to East Bay Township site plan review standards, and we said this is similar to the previous project. It was COVID, which we know was like to get fees paid and things accepted, and that's the next email. The tab 1 exhibit 2, they start to mention this requirement for a 75-foot additional 42 feet of additional right of way for a total of 75 feet from the center line of Airport Road onto the subject property. The diagram following that figure 316 signalized intersection control is a diagram given to my engineers and planners from Ron Roloff, the permit agent, posted from the road commission engineer. There's 3 circled letters on there. This is taken at the bottom, you'll see directly from Michigan Access Management Guidebook. And you'll notice the corner clearances to the intersection are marked by the Access Management Guidebook as desirable, not required, desirable. Somewhere in time, the road commission adopted a guidebook, and this guidebook is if you're in greenfield development where there was nothing else to deal with, no property lines, no other hindrances or obstacles, it'd be great to have these, but unfortunately we're not in that world, and engineers and designers both have to work within the constraints of property limits and property rights in Michigan. The next page is our site plan. Again, you'll see the approach to Town Line Road. It's the far south of the property as far as we can go, and the approach to South Airport being as far east on the property that we can legally go. Tab 2, Exhibit 1. There's a yellow highlighted. I'll go to Parents 2 on this. This is what I understand, this is from Ron Roloff, the permit agent, to Petra Kunis, my project manager. He has the first paragraph, received the engineer's comments, as well as red box right up of the prints. We have those, and again, you have those also in previous submittal. So Parents 2 says, and I understand this is a cut and paste from the road commission engineer. It says, I have concerns with both driveways not having enough distance from the edge of the through lane at the intersection. But if they accept the other comments, I'll be persuaded to give them the full access drive off Town Line, and possibly a right in, right out, as much as I hate them off South Airport Road. So basically, we give them the right of way, which, and I need you to understand, the distance to the driveway approach from the intersection has nothing to do with the right of way that's lateral on the property. The one is a safety concern. The other one is basically a land donation that at this time the road commission has no identified plans to do anything with. The two do not have anything to do together. But if I donate, if my client donates that right away, he gets his accesses. So all of a sudden, if we give that right away to the road commission, any and all safety concerns go away, and I get my approaches. The next page is the dedication of is the language provided for the dedication of right of way as found in the Grand Traverse County Road Commission guidelines for development. And IMB is to say where developments are adjacent to public roadways, right of ways, you'll give it 1/2 the width of the desired unit. You'll see that 150 feet. We then asked for final comments. As we tried to work through the issues, again, it's clarified that the urban minor arterial is 150 feet wide. Our standards do allow the board to make some modifications for that. And finally, the stormwater retention basins are not allowed in the right of way. Now, another piece of this property and its relationship to South Airport Road at that point is South Airport Road is basically flat along the lengthwise and crosswise, cross-section wise. We're all locals. We know that area. It's low, flat, but that does not relieve the road commission, who had just done or had done through other permits with the airport and with Costco development, a chance to improve that. There are no curbs in there. There's no stormwater in there. There's no ditches provided. And basically what the engineer is saying through this is that water right now runs across the road, across our right-of-way line, onto your property, wherever it goes, and therefore we have the rights to maintain that. There's no identification of where they want to take their water, how much water we're supposed to deal with, or is it simply the entire property should be just condemned for retention purposes? If that is so, and this condition exists pretty much from Town Line Road to South or 3 Mile Road, we've got a lot of issues with property values along that corridor. We then took that context and we said, you know what, we'll provide a basically a ditch, a basin, or a swale, a depression in the ground to the size of a 25-year storm event, and allow size strictly and only to capture the South Airport, the south side of South Airport Road as it exists along our frontage. The water from that would go into a basin, a swale, or a ditch. Because there's no outlet to anywhere along there, because there is no other ditches, it then was presumed that that is stormwater retention. Again, a ditch transmits water, a retention basin captures it. So the issue again was, well, we can't have retention in the right of way. If you look across the street that the Costco improvements were just done with that development, you have a depression in the ground that has no outlet between the easterly entrance to Costco or the westerly. So therefore, it is now a retention basin. It was allowed. So in the right of way. Tab 5, Exhibit 1, at the bottom of the page, we asked them, and now we have a client to report to, where is the statutory requirement to provide this right of way? The engineer comes back and says, in the second to the last paragraph, you're correct, there is no current statute requiring the additional right of way donation based on the classification of the roadway. The standard is typically achieved by township approval process when they require development to follow the standards. That was never mentioned in the township approval conditions. So he continues on. With that in mind, and when I began reviewing this development, I kept the additional right-of-way donation in mind with the following. Again, I'll say that the right-of-way does not have anything to do with proximity of the driveway approaches to the signalized intersection. Neither driveway meets the current standard. Again, it's not a standard, it's a desired guideline from the access management. There is not a standard in that. Town line is close, but I was willing to allow this as a full access as an exception. South Airport Drive is no way close, but I was willing to allow for right in, right out as an exception. Go down another paragraph after the bullet points, it says, without the ability to secure the road and control a wider right of way through this highly traveled and important corridor, I have to consider the impacts to the public. The public will notice driveways and stormwater, curb and gutter. They will not have any impact from the lack of right of way because the road commission doesn't have any plans. Again, what this lays out is if I give away land that has a substantial value, all the safety concerns go away. The next exhibit in this excerpt is a blow up of the plan, whereby you will see all the improvements that we put into place at the developer's cost. You'll see curved approaches, you'll see improvements to the right of way, you'll see our basins there. That are again are strictly designed to capture the road commission's water because it did not make provisions to handle its own stormwater. We're putting all those improvements inside an easement and going to dedicate that easement to the road commission. We had this conversation with staff and council of the road commission several months ago. I'm going to tell you, and she can make her own interpretation, that she did not see the difference between an easement and a dedicated right of way, pursuant to the objectives set forth by your staff. And at one time, we were probably inches close to getting there. So that was a increase 17 feet. And again, the township setbacks, you know, which they always want more area, start from a right of way, but they don't start from an easement. So that did not impact our site plan. Now, if this is the goal of the road commission on South Airport and other roads in the area, as we've discussed on other projects, to have this football field and a half distance from a lighted intersection having a speed of over 35 miles an hour, which there are several that I drove through on my way here tonight. That's how much distance they want from the signalized intersection to any driveway. I give you the exhibits that follow, starting from South Airport and Division. Moving easterly. And you'll see the yellow dash line is the existing right of way. The red line is the desired right of way, and you'll see the 460-foot dimensions. The first one is not much. In order to accomplish this, and as I understand it from staff here, the road commission could cause this to happen, take this position anytime there's a change of use to a certain site. So I'm going to say if Speedway gas station at the northwest corner of US 31 Division and South Airport wanted to expand or change their use, they would lose their driveway on South Airport Road because it's well inside the 460 feet. Similarly with now the True North gas station, the Fifth Third Bank site. So there's 4 drives in this one and 4 properties that are in effect. That's nothing compared to Cass Road and South Airport Road, the next exhibit. Again, to meet that 460 feet away from the lit intersection, the signalized intersection, you'd have to lose 18 driveways affecting 13 properties. If this is what you want to do, let me know, because there's other township supervisors that need to tell their constituents what's out there and how their properties are going to be affected by this statute. Let's go on to Park and South Airport Road. 5 drives away would have to go away, and 3 properties, over 3 properties. South Airport and Barlow, 16 driveways would have to go away, and 12 properties would be affected if you want to carry this standard out. Garfield and South Airport, 18 driveways would have to go away over 12 different properties to meet this standard. Then I go on to our intersection and the 3 Mile and South Airport. Most of these are residential, vacant, except for ours. And I only give them to make sure I was inclusive of everything there. Commissioners, I don't have anything. Your engineer inherited these standards. It was 2014 when these were put in. There are 2 other apartment projects a quarter-mile east of my development that were permitted and constructed that didn't have any of these implementations. You need to give your engineer some latitude to make decisions. He is upholding your ordinance. I respect him. I've known him for almost my whole life, and he's doing what he's supposed to do, but he needs some latitude here to deal with the reality of Traverse City, Grand Traverse County, and the property owners they're on and businesses they're in. So I'm going to hand it or ask counsel for the applicant. Do you have anything to add?
Could we just kind of step in? I mean, just with a couple of questions. How did we determine that South Airport is a minor arterial?
It's a federal class.
It is a and that's okay. So whether or not there's any property donated, there is a 75-foot on either side. I mean, there's 150 foot. If it's a minor arterial, that is
desired.
Well,
right now it's only 66 feet dedicated.
Well, And I'm not trying to, but I'm just trying to clarify. I tend to think, and personally, as far as, if the earlier correspondence set plans in motion and plans cost money and all that, I tend to think we go by, I prefer that we go by what our people are saying. And frankly, you're right. It's kind of not Wayne's place. He has to kind of go by what he has to go by. And that's why we're here. So the following minimum right of way width shall be required for all public roadways. So if this is a minor arterial, it is 150 foot.
Well, it wants to be 150 foot. The property owner right now, his title work would tell you he only dedicated 33 feet. So these are new
So
things.
did we change the classification?
Oh, they've grown over time. What you want, what the highway administration wants has grown over time. It always, but when it was originally platted and going back to the, Act 51, it was 33 feet was dedicated to the road commission.
And you have a plan here showing your retention ponds basically dissected by the line of the right of way line. I mean, if this is the plan that you'd like, correct?
Yes.
This is what you'd like to operate as. And even though it's our right of way, do we have any restrictions on this existing? I mean, even though if it were, let's assume that it is our right of way. Do we have any, does the road commission have any problem allowing this development on here to complete the plan?
I'm gonna turn that over to Wayne. He's the engineer. He's got all
Well,
the, he's the professional
because, I mean,
engineer.
Clearly the development needs the retention ponds. And if it works with the township plans, the township has approved the plans.
Township has approved our project.
And it doesn't change the function of the road otherwise, where is our problem? And that's just what I'm trying to get to. Where are we having a problem? And are we fighting a fight that's going to be more trouble for us than it's worth?
Wayne?
Thank you. And some clarifications. The development is, as Doug's kind of presented it, has got some challenges with it. Formerly, there was, I believe this was a residential parcel.
Yes, single family.
On there, single family residential parcels. It's now zoned commercial, so commercial can go in there. The previous property was, as I said, residential and didn't necessarily serve or create issues that way. As it's being developed into a commercial, it jumps into that where we follow the access management guidebook, correct? But those standards are based on nationwide state guidance principles. So distance from intersections is extremely important. And we can look up and down the roads and we can point out any number of different businesses that have been established and are in place for quite some time that are located very close to intersections, and it's very easy for us to identify the problems of those and why we no longer allow those so close to the intersection. Crashes and lockups and things of that nature. So these guides are out there to indicate the distance based on speed and away from an intersection. So what we are required is we do not restrict and prohibit access to parcels, but we keep that in mind with we allow reasonable access. This development is proposing two different entrances, one on Town Line and one on South Airport. The South Airport being the major road is going to be the most restrictive that we apply. It does not meet that distance. So therefore, initially, I would say no. You would have reasonable access onto Town Line. Now, Town Line also does not meet. But that being the minor road, and it is a intersection controlled by traffic light, That does give a little bit more safety, and therefore we said that we could allow a full access off of town line. Lower ADT, lower speeds. It's a 25-mile-an-hour zone on town line. In regards to right-of-way, correct. We cannot require that they donate right-of-way. It's our position, and we recommend that to the township planning. If they choose not to enforce that, so be it. That's not our ability to enforce that. If it's that important, then we can negotiate and perhaps purchase right of way in order to do that for a pending upcoming development. We have no pending upcoming developments on South Airport through that section. Further down to the east, we are looking at expanding that section of roadway, but not right here at this intersection.
How far is the Costco entrance?
They have a right in, right out entrance that is, without a diagram, I think a little bit further to the east.
Okay,
Right.
does that fall into the 450 feet that are what you're supposed to fall in? How far is this entrance right here? What is this?
We're about 300 feet, right?
300 feet, okay. And it's 45 mile an hour. Look, if you guys don't mind.
No, that's what we're here for.
Okay, first of all, if we're gonna claim that there must be 150 foot right of way, okay, or shall be, if we're gonna enforce that, then what we need to do as a road commission is condemn and pay for, compensate for that property, because ultimately that's, otherwise it's just a taking. We can't do that. So then we have to have a plan for that. As far as the exit, I mean, 300 feet is not, we're on the other side, you know, of the road. I mean, it's not as if, well,
Costco's about 580 feet.
500, is it that far out? Yeah, thank you. Okay. Distances, you know, I wrap my head around it, because those people are always coming right into the traffic.
The difficulty with, and as I said, as much as I hate right in, right out.
Yeah.
Because if you have a small car or a big truck, the impediment and the diverging island inside of that right in, right out are a mere nuisance. Small vehicles can easily make a left turn out of a right turn out only. Trucks can just drive right over the curb. So they're not that terribly effective, but for those people that will respect them, they do work. So as much as I hate them, that would be, you know, an acceptable allowance to go in on South Airport, is for a right in, right out. The difficulty with coming out of there to turn left at that location is the proximity to the designated left turn bay.
Yeah.
For the intersection. You crossing over, you know, several different, you know, lanes and that turn lane. And so that creates safety issues being so close to the intersection.
And we're receptive to the right in, right out on South Airport. That's what we put on our last plan.
The last plan is a right in, right out?
On South Airport.
Now, we've never accepted retention basins within the road right of way. Retention basins being where there's no outlet. That is standard within Michigan, that road water that falls onto the road is not road commission water. Water sheets off of the roadway onto adjoining parcels, and that's an encumbrance that every parcel property owner enjoys in order to have a road. And that was a discussion, I believe, between our councils. I don't know what the determination on that was, but in my 32 years of professional work, that has been, I'm aware of, has been challenged numerous times. Every single time it's resolved with that acceptance, that water it's not road commission water, it's water that sheets off of the road, and every property owner accepts it. So we still we're at that position where we're not going to accept retention basins within the road right of way. And that I believe would also be supported by soil erosion sedimentation control. So they have to, that has to not be on the plan.
So you're saying, engineer, the Costco retention basin that runs parallel and adjacent to South Airport Road, capturing South Airport Road only, should have never been designed, built, or accepted in the road commission's right.
I'm not aware that Costco has a retention basin. There is a ditch system that goes to the east, that then goes beyond their other access road at the east end of their parcel, and then goes into a designated retention basin outside of the road right of way.
I will recheck my
Okay.
observations and see if there's a culvert there, because I could not find a culvert outlet.
So Wayne, your position is that perhaps you can live with the right in, right out. The town line road is an acceptable full access driveway, but the water is the problem at this point.
Correct, yes.
Just so you're aware, that was a fix. If we have to take that water into our site, that was another proposal. Just tell us how much, and we'll direct it back to our retention basins. And you'll never, and within the 62 pages of communications, we never got that answer from the engineer after repeated requests of how much water, where's it going? What storm event should we design for? These kind of things.
That would be under the guise and the jurisdiction of soil erosion sedimentation control.
Soil erosion and sedimentation in this county does not handle stormwater. So they only handle soil erosion. So it would become under, it's your jurisdiction. I need to know from the road commission what you want that size for. And the only other thing is I'm prepared to give you an easement to encompass all those improvements, but I'm not prepared to give you right away.
Any other questions for either party?
No.
Okay, I mean, this is a lot of stuff to digest. A lot of legal terms, a lot of shalls and could be's and coulda, woulda, shouldas that I guess we all need to look at and digest and have some conversation possibly with our staff and council.
I guess I do have a question.
Okay.
Where, I'm looking at this here and the only other basin I'm seeing is along town line.
All right, so
Is that
we have
correct?
internal basins for the development. The basins
So
that you,
you're taking care of your water on
right,
site through a leach basin under the pavement or
yeah.
wherever.
Well, we've stormwater basins because of the high and groundwater table behind the units, yeah. That have been approved by the township engineer.
And I guess I see here between the 66 and the 75, the 75 is running right through, it looks like some proposed commercial development.
Mhm.
And due to the fact that would pretty much eliminate the ability to do that, is it?
Mhm.
I mean, not to point out the obvious, but to make sure the obvious is
Right.
right. So a great deal of the 6675 is how it impacts the ability to develop property with this commercial in front. Wayne, does that, the additional traffic load of potential commercial on the front as opposed to these apartments weigh into these, the distances and the criteria for the distances from the corner?
No, what weighs into it is just from a safety.
Safety, whether it's one car or 500 cars a day,
Right.
the safety factor remains the same.
Correct.
In essence.
And what weighs into it is when you get proximity of businesses closer to the right of way lines on there, that enters into it.
So basically, we're to the point, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's that front basin that is the issue here at this point. Is that correct? That's the only issue?
Well, I would say,
That water,
we can,
for the
you know,
most part?
I have guys that have bachelor degrees that can figure stuff out. That's what you pay for. Water we can handle, you know.
And that's the issue we have here now.
My issue
Is that
is
the only issue we have?
right away, still.
Well, if the basin goes away, then you don't have the right of way issue, do you?
Well, legally, your guidelines still require the engineer to request the right of way, as I understand. it.
75 feet.
Yeah,
And as I've noted, you know, we've stated that in there, but as I also noted, that is something that if the township support, they know our guidelines and our recommendations. If they don't support it, I can't require it.
Mhm.
And so what we do is then we work with, now, because of that, business is going to be closer, so that does mean safety. I have to put more emphasis on the safety, and so that does fall into, you know, again, I don't care for write-ins, write-outs, but it is reasonable on there. So I could allow for a write-in, write-out on South Airport. The business, the development needs a full access. And again, it's doesn't meet the guidelines on town line. And I could go to the extent of permitting only a write-in, write-out there as well. I don't feel that with a 25-mile-an-hour zone that is to that extent necessary. And so doing a full access there, I believe, gives that development a full access ability in and out of off the town line into there to serve their parcel, along with then a restricted write-in, write-out off of South Airport.
Okay, so basically then I guess the two contentious points here are, number one is 6675. And what do we do with the water up front? Is that correct? The right in, right out, and the full on town line is acceptable. So those are the
66, 150, I mean.
well,
Yes.
well, so I mean, the
3375.
3375.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the green line and the red line.
Mhm.
So those are the 2 points of contentiousness that we need. If those are resolved, then in effect,
We're okay.
we're in agreement. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, you know, as I stated there, it's like, I don't require them, I can't require them to give right of way. So that for me is a non-issue. There has been consultation between, you know, the legal counsels onto that. My issue is those driveways and the retention of water held up into the road.
Yeah. Okay. So. the
So
right
if
of
they
way
ditch
issue.
it and tube it into their system, then that issue goes away.
The developer had to look at this is a pretty intense development for a fairly small site. Doug, you'd have to say the developer should have done some due diligence, said, boy, it's a small site. Where does all this water go? I see it lying along there any day.
Actually, you'll, in the 62 pages that I gave this road commission, you will see where my engineer went out after about a 100-year storm event and didn't see any water laying there. So, and you know, I mean, we've all been driving around here. I mean, you don't see flooding along that road. It's sand, you know. So we went out and witnessed after a storm looking for that water.
I have seen that area flood.
It's extraordinarily wet. And those apartments that are built back to the east on a slab have experienced some difficulties with maybe not flooding, but just moldy wet.
But the township has decided the density. We don't have anything to do with that. So we
Right.
advise it.
Mhm.
It seemed a little dense.
Yeah.
It's not ours.
Yeah, not our call.
Well, from my perspective, the argument, I mean, really where I'm having a problem with is whether or not we have a 75-foot right of way or we don't.
We do not.
If we're acting as if we do, or as if we have control, I mean, basically by saying, well, if there's gonna be development there, we have to recognize a 75-foot, or 150-foot right of way. That's the same as saying we have one, in a sense. I mean, that's if it prevents us from allowing development in that space, that's saying that we have control over that. And if we have control over that, then we have the right of way. And if that's the case, we might as well, have a condemnation proceeding and pay for it. I mean, if we're gonna, assert control as a result of that difference between 33 and 75 feet, then we have a responsibility on the other side of the, of the control issue.
Since the safety is our primary, can we direct Wayne to negotiate the water business with him? And
Yeah, I mean, this is an appointment. I don't think there's anything, to particularly a resolution or something to vote to resolve this. And I think we'd all be a little remiss to do that with 66 on pages plus these dropped on our desk here in 10 or 15 minutes.
Well, if I can say, you had the packets at your manager's office or not in your hands about 2 or 3 months ago and decided not to look at them. Our other conversation went on with your attorney and staff last fall. This has been a long time, guys.
It's been on the radar.
It is. There was couple of emails touching upon this fringe wise. So I guess
I mean, ultimately, I think we either determine that we allow something that's not going to affect our operation of the roads, or we, maybe we ignore the shall have right of way on a minor arterial. The one problem we have is that we gave preliminary approval to a design. And, I mean, I know that that's not necessarily hard, that doesn't necessarily make a hard decision. It does affect and cost money for the people involved. And where is our liability there? And so,
I would preface that with the understanding that these guides are, in our standards, are downloadable off of our website, and developers are directed to them to go through them, and they still were presented in the form that they were.
as you're saying that the standards are there, they're accessible, they're obvious, but yet the plan that was presented to them initially did not follow those.
Correct.
As if they had not seen them or chose not to
Well,
respond to them.
I have to say that your permitting agent, who's not here anymore, probably by the direction of your staff, did not require any of those. The previous projects, a couple hundred yards down the roads that were built in the same period that we were permitting this one, no one said stop. No, none of the new staff said, like construction codes will. If construction code sees a 2x4 wrong, they'll tell you to rip it up. If these things were so wrong along those two other apartment projects, why did nobody from the road commission stop by and say, wait a minute, we got something wrong, time out, let's do it right? Nobody did that. So when it comes to policies and procedures, we followed those exactly. We are very well experienced. We know where these guidelines are. And some of this stuff, frankly, this distance thing is a guideline. It's a desirable distance. That's what it says in your own book. And now it's being upheld like it's the Bible and it's claimed to be a standard. It's not. It's desirable. I believe your engineer needs some license to say, how do I work with the parcels that he's been given, and because he's taking the safest path, and I understand that. So, but that's, if we didn't have property lines, if we didn't have townships and cities and villages and we're on the green field, it'd be great. But that's not the world that this gentleman inherited, you know? So, but he's doing the best he can, you know, and I think he needs license from you guys a little bit on this one. And others coming down the road. It's a busy town.
So when do we put these guidelines into effect?
2014.
So would it be appropriate to say we should probably review these as a whole as a next step? Because any.
Well, that's how we deal with something where there is development that's going to conflict with.
Yeah, and we've seen in the past that the guidelines were very poor or non-existent, and that's why we see a lot of really bad development and really bad traffic situations in Grand Traverse County. Is, you know, there's the old saying, you know, paying for the sins of our fathers, or the inattentiveness of them, or lack of foresight. But that's neither here nor there, and it doesn't do us any good with this today, other than to look at. I think we have an obligation that if we did leave them down the primrose path prior, that led them to believe that they were good to go, so to speak, and now we're shutting the door on that, saying, "Oh, never mind." I think we have some obligation that we have to look at that. And otherwise, and then too, we do have to give, you know, where it is a gray area, we need to give some guidance as the ultimate arbiter of this, I guess. And it seems like we have gotten it down to, personally, I would be less willing to bend on the stormwater issue, because that is such a broad issue throughout the entire spectrum of everywhere in the world, literally. Well, at least in this county and the country. The other issue is the safety of the in and out. This seems to be a non-issue. I guess we need to look at very closely at the green line and the red line, I guess. That would be the single sticking point here, unless I'm missing something. And I guess we should look at that. I guess what are our feelings on that issue? Obviously, the township has expressed an acceptability of the 66 foot.
I believe that they never even addressed it.
Never addressed it. Okay.
Well, the limitations of the right of way. I mean, if this is our right of way, what are the limitations on the property owners? Ultimately,
if it's our right of way, we have jurisdiction of it. There's no permanent structures allowed. There's no retention basins allowed within our road right of way.
Does it say there's no retention basins allowed? I mean, is there anything that language that says that we don't allow retention basins in our right of way?
I believe in our standards.
Not only ours, but I think MDOT and pretty much it's across the board.
Well, and I would understand that if we're in a 30 foot, 33 foot, but I mean, this is an extended area, and the sides of the retention basins are even outside of the 33 feet. I mean, it's beyond the standard. And though it is a minor arterial, do we have any plans on widening this at all? Is there anything that you can even think of that we would widen? It's not like we're ever going to build through a swamp to take South Airport further out.
Right at this area, the road has been increased with the Costco project. It's been increased on there, and so that section has we have no plans there. Further to the east, we do have plans on widening that to a 3-lane.
Right.
To have a center left turn lane.
The big thing here, it looks to me like if it's 30, if it's the green line or the red line, if we stick to our guns and say, no, it has to be the red line, basically the developer is out his commercial portion of it, which I'm sure changes his perspectives a bit, which may be the crux of this whole conversation. But
and there is a value.
Yeah, absolutely, I guess. So I guess personally, I guess I'd look at this and say, hold the line on the water. We can bend because of the circumstances on the driveways, and I guess we just need to make the decision on
whether we ignore the right of way or we take and pay. I mean that seems to be the.
I will, as Doug noted, an important thing to recognize is the difference between right of way and easements. with an easement, that gives us permission at any later time to kind of utilize that area down through there. And it wouldn't affect their offsets. If we own it, the offsets change back, further restricting the development.
Right.
They would shut this one down if we.
It messes up with their township plan as well. Right.
Correct.
Right, because that's where it starts.
Right.
Okay.
So in most instances, an easement satisfies anything that we need or desire to do on a road section. That allows us to do sidewalk, utilities, ditches, widenings, if need be.
So could we, I mean, rather than pursue the 75-foot right of way, could we pursue an easement instead? And then this allows them to basically develop as planned, right?
Yes, and our standards do also allow, as an exception, to step down one national functional classification limit for right of way. As an exception.
Okay.
That allows us, so we,
That
would
takes
allow,
us to 120 feet,
that would take us to the 120.
so 60.
And that's currently in the standards.
And that would get us to the outside of the, well, at least retention. Are these retention ponds oversized or, I mean,
Nothing's oversized in that corridor, I will tell you. It's high groundwater, Mitchell Creek watershed there.
Right.
That's the best we could do and meet the cover over the water main and the sewer and all the other gas, electric, and all the other utilities in there. So
how can we make this work, Wayne?
Again, the right of way that is, I can't require that. If they grant us an easement, that's in the public's best interest, that's great, but that is not a requirement. I can do a right in, right out. I'm comfortable enough with that. I don't like them. I don't think they work very well. But it can be reasonable on South Airport. A full access, I feel, is reasonable on Town Line. Retention basins within the road right of way are not reasonable.
Well, I'm hearing a solution here.
Yeah, this is their drawing. Okay. Just showing the right in, right out, which we're willing to accept. With full access here, which
The detail of the right in, right out needs to follow where there's a center island and a splitter island.
So if this is updated to the standard for which you're proposing, then this would be acceptable. This we can live with.
That drawing there, I believe that approach either needs to be set back or I can't tell from here if you've got curb and gutter. Is there a curb and gutter on up to here?
Oh, I definitely.
That's right.
Okay, so if there's curb and gutter put in here, then that can come right up flush like that. If there's no curb and gutter here, that needs to be recessed back. Correct.
Okay, so it sounds like with a little tweaking, this can make, everybody can be content.
Yes, and they have, from their first submittal or an earlier submittal, they've adjusted that so that their spring point doesn't wrap around onto the adjoining parcel, trying to be good neighbors. And so they've already accomplished that.
So if we as a board come to the conclusion that this proposed 50-foot easement is acceptable to us and will work for them, it's on their drawing, so I assume it's acceptable to them as well, the owner, then we have in effect issue resolved. Is that and the retention water goes away?
That satisfies, I think, the public's safety interest in this project. In this,
everybody is equally dissatisfied.
Again, as Doug pointed out,
try to lighten.
If we're in the middle of nowhere, we could make everything work.
What's the rest of the board?
Any future expansion of South Airport should be okay within the 50-foot easement.
It would, That's hard to say into the future, into, you know, yeah, into, with the developments there and the limitations and, everything there, that's probably going to satisfy into, you know, the next 15 to 20 year period.
Because what we don't want to do is 20 years from now, the 5 individuals sitting here will say, what were those knuckleheads thinking?
Yeah.
And as we have said many times in the past over situations, we've got to get them some across. Yeah, we get it.
I can almost guarantee that that will be said 15, 20 years. And that is why standards are continually changing and upgrading and addressing.
Airport roads have passed because of poor standards previously was done at lack of foresight.
So do we need a motion to tell the engineer to address this to his satisfaction? We don't have to visit this again. No, we're gonna have to revisit it when it's finally in front of it, because we're gonna have to approve.
We have to approve.
We have to approve it.
Approve it, which I guess.
If they
would
can
be,
handle the details out, then we have.
Especially if we're giving them direction.
Right.
It's gonna have to come
I
back.
guess when we get a drawing that is the final absolute agreed upon by both parties, then we'll act
I
upon
think
it.
we all know where we're going on this, so.
So anybody else feel good, feel bad? Okay, so we can accept the 50 foot. Or we can direct the engineer to accept the 50 foot proposed 50 foot easement.
And it is our goal to be working on updating our standards.
Noted.
Okay, so anybody have?
We have a planning thing coming up sometime.
We think we understand where we're at and what we need to do to finalize this thing and bring it back for final rubber stamp.
I understand.
Okay, so it's up to you guys now. Till we meet again.
All right, thanks so much.
That's right. We have a 7:25 appointment, which is now 8:13.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Joe Quant. I'm an attorney representing the Mission Hills Homeowners Association. Address is 412 South Union, and I promise not to cause as much brain damage as your last agenda. With me tonight is several members of our community organization from the Homeowners Association, some who you've already heard from and some you haven't. We don't want to, overburden you with additional information, but I did think that it was going to be helpful to have maybe kind of a little bit of a recap and to ask for the commission's engagement or maybe more enhanced engagement in problem solving with respect to Bluff Road. As you know, this problem's been going on since, I think the first time that the Homeowners Association was here was in March of 20. They had also engaged GEI, who had the first report, which I think was given to you in October of 20. In December of 20, at that point, you wisely engaged GEI. I think that they're a great firm. We do a lot of work with them ourselves. But in December, I think that the commission had sought to have additional, coordination of effort with respect to not only the residents, the township, affected landowners, as well as the HOA. And we certainly continue to support that. And we also continue to support a collaborative solution. We know that this is not a problem that's just the road commissions, and we're here to be part of the solution. We're interested in not only being part of the discussion about what's going to be done, but we also know that this isn't probably just something that only the road commission is going to pay for. So, but as we move forward, we seem to be, we're making progress, but we're making very slow progress. Your manager and Mr. Schoonover did meet with us in late April, which we very much appreciate their engagement. Let us know that there was a forthcoming report that was coming from GEI. We haven't seen that. I think that you're going to see it tonight. We would like, if time would permit and your patience will permit, if there's an opportunity to ask some questions, we'd like the opportunity to do that We'd also like the opportunity to be on future agendas, not necessarily to be a pest or a burr under your saddle, so to speak, but to try to keep the process moving forward as fluidly and as comprehensively as we can. So, we want to be your partners in a solution here. We're hoping that you perceive it that way. And we're hoping that you'll continue to keep a shoulder behind yours, so to speak, to keep this process moving downstream. No pun intended. Any questions for me? I'm happy to entertain anything.
Commissioner?
I think it probably is appropriate when we have the presentation by GEI. At that point, we can really address this more. We just got that today. We had a draft earlier in the week that we were looking through, but we are just now at the point where they have a final presentation for us.
Did we resolve the access situation?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, the barricades have been put in on a temporary, easily movable situation, correct? That's where it's at right now. So they can get in and out, and they have permits for each individual from the association. They have a right-of-way permit for them to be able to get in and use that stretch of road with the understanding that, they're assuming some liability and they have insurance to cover them for when they're in there.
Good. Perfect.
Isn't it great when you take care of the easy stuff?
Yeah, we still have some road to travel, but we're hopeful that we can continue the forward progress.
That's a rough road, pardon the pun.
It is.
We're very choppy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, then I guess the next item is the consent calendar. I guess that puts work back on the spot.
The consent calendar is used to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together without discussion. Request by any person present to remove any item from the consent calendar for full discussion as agenda items are automatically respected. The action noted in parentheses for all items remaining on the consent calendar are approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. The manager recommends the following items be adopted. 1, minutes. 2, payroll. 3, accounts payable. 4, financial reports. And 5, reports and communications.
Okay, are there any items within the consent calendar that any commissioner or member of the public would care to see removed? Hearing none, I guess. We need a
motion to accept.
motion. We have the support.
I'll support it. Just noted if you're going to ask for.
Oh, yeah, okay, since we still are online, I guess technically. Is there any indication of anyone virtually watching that they wish to comment? I forgot. I'm just human.
There is.
No.
That's fine.
Okay, we've got the prerequisite timeframe, and no one who's online has indicated. We have motion and support. Any further discussion? I guess it's time for a roll call.
Brown,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Melder.
Yes. All right, since there were no items removed, we go right to item D, engineering reimbursement form 2044. US.
This is a standard reimbursement form for retaining a professional engineer in accordance with Act 51. You did retain me all of last year. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Feel free to add to this, to my salary. Okay, not. But this is a standard form, and we do this annually. So we'd recommend the chair's signature on this, and our clerk will submit this into NDOT for reimbursement.
Well, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and sign the reimbursement form for 2044 with the chair, and I believe it's one member that has to sign according to this, and I think that's what it is.
Do I hear support? Support. Okay, motion to support. Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, I guess this would probably be a roll call with the Andy idea.
Gilman,
Yes.
Neiman.
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Mauser.
Yes. It's one of those bureaucratic things that we see every year. Item E, resolution for abandonment of Lockett Heath. I know this was initially brought up last month, so I guess.
And we approved it, but we did not get the resolution form, so. That's the form.
So, yep, so in your packet, you've got resolution 2021-0504. In short, this is for Lockett Heath Drive, formerly known as Maitland Road, being in section 23 and section 26. Lying west of US 31, being 1,174 feet more or less. This is the applicants that submitted their true and correct list of names and mailing addresses of the owners and record occupants of the land abutting the said road. The owners of the record and the occupants of land abutting the road had signed the petition requesting the abandonment. Beckman Township has supported the proposed abandonment, and we feel that it is in the best interest of the public to absolutely abandon and discontinue this road. Upon abandonment, the proper authorities of Beckman Township, where the road is situated, and the Department of Transportation would receive notice. And then also notice would be placed into a general circulation newspaper in Grand Traverse County once each week for 3 successive weeks.
We adopt this resolution.
Motion, do we have support? Support. We have motion and support. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, I guess let's do a roll call.
Neiman,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Mauser.
Yes. Item F, Springbrook and Timber Hills SAD agreements.
We have not received those, and so we would beg to remove those and push those to next meeting.
Okay. G, Bluff Road update, GEI, staff and GEI discuss results and findings.
Yes, thank you. And I think this is the big attraction for tonight. So we do have Carolyn Gunderman with GEI with us tonight virtually. And so she will be going through and presenting the reports of what they have found for out on Bluff Road for the slope stability. And at this point, Larry will do his magic.
Okay, Carolyn, I am going to stop my share and then you can share your screen with us.
Okay, where, oh, maybe I can see this in here. I was just looking for the share screen option. We use a lot of Teams. I'm not so familiar with Zoom.
Right at the bottom middle, you should see a share screen.
It is not giving me that as an option. Let's see if I can. Yeah, it's not showing that as an option. Oh, there we go. All right, so let's do this. You can bear with me for just a minute here. Let me know if you all can see my screen.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, it's shared. There we go.
There we go.
How's that? Okay.
Good.
All right, so First, thanks to Wayne and Joe for inviting me on to tonight's call to give you guys a short presentation on our initial findings and some commentary as a preliminary, presentation to the report that will be coming out. For folks that aren't as familiar with what has been asked of us, GEI was brought on by the Road Commission to study the section of Bluff Road that lies between the two road closures and provide an assessment of the existing condition of that section of road and have, some preliminary discussions about steps forward. So what I'll be speaking to tonight is that area between, from the southern closure to the northern closure and a bit of the in-between. So start by giving you an overview. So I'll start by giving you an overview from an aerial perspective of the sections of the Bluff Road area that we looked at. It's kind of a funky view, but you'll see that it's kind of helpful later on in the presentation as we show things essentially looking from the water in towards the bluff, and north is kind of to your upper right and south is to your bottom left. So everyone's oriented. And you'll see a few blue lines on this screen. Those represent the areas that we took a deeper dive in, created a geotechnical cross section at those specific locations, and I'll talk about why they were chosen in a little bit. The north and south lines represent the specific location where the soil borings that we did were taken, and represent the specific geology at those two particular spots. And the middle section is at a spot where it was kind of a particularly interesting surface area that we noticed where there was a developing slide, and wanted to try to model that and represent it using the geology on the north and south ends as a sort of a hybrid, and just looking at what the soil mechanics would be if we were to have a boring there, and just kind of look at it from a slightly different dynamic in an area that has not yet failed up into the pavement but has the potential to. So those were really the locations why those locations were chosen. We'll go into depth on each one here, starting at the south end. And you'll have to ignore some of this text here is upside down, but I wanted to orient this aerial so that it was relevant to the photography that we have from the drone. So on the left, you will see, this is really where we took this cross section. The drill rig was on the back side of this closure, or on the back side of this failure, and you see the scarp in the foreground here. Interestingly, at each of these locations where we took these cross sections, something that we hadn't anticipated, but that we did notice and becomes relevant later, is the fact that a lot of these areas where we're seeing developing and/or previous slides exist in areas where we noted upstream. And when I say upstream, I mean above the road and behind the road, where we noticed that there were some drainage features and/or retention ponds, low-lying areas, natural drainage areas, those types of things where groundwater and surface water are sort of pooling and collecting. You'll see why that's important in a little bit. So here you can just see at the south end here, this is that access that once was down to the water's edge, and the existing failure there. And we'll come back to this picture because there's some really interesting things that we can learn about slide failures and the mechanisms behind that in a little bit, just to kind of orient everybody here. So move on to the next slide. We did kind of go back in Google Earth and look at this just to see if that area with the cattails in the previous photo was in fact a detention pond that held water, and it did. We did see evidence of that. So again, that's important. We see this ditch that allows water to flow down to this retention pond area. And this retention pond, after talking with Joe and Wayne, we do not believe that there are any drains from this pond that would allow the water out other than into this ditch down here. So we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. This is the middle section, just south of where I believe folks store their shore stations in the winter, where that turnout is. My understanding is currently that there is some access being allowed from the southern closure up to that area for folks to be able to get their shore stations out. At the time, we didn't really realize that, we kind of looked at this more or less from a facts perspective and from a geotechnical perspective, and where are these failures occurring and what's interesting to look at from that perspective. And that's really why we chose this cross section. But this was a little concerning to us in that you can see this failure on the left picture, the scarp starting to develop and this failure starting to develop. And it does not currently go back into the road surface. It's within the right of way, but it's not currently impacting the road surface directly. And we'll look at the results of the slope stability analysis model that was completed at this specific spot as well. And then thirdly, at the north end, of course, the much larger failure, this is in an area on the right. You can kind of see, if you look at the topography, that this is a natural spillway, so not something man-made, but still an area that collects water from upstream sources. Might not pond or pool back there, but the groundwater is concentrated and surface water is directed in that area. Definitely led to the soils that on the bluff here being saturated and led to the collapse. So we'll look at that. This is just a screenshot, and it's probably a little bit hard to see depending on what kind of size screen you're looking at, but I think those of you there in the room probably have a good view. These soil boring logs will be included in our report, but they do show some very interesting layers. This is not uncommon. We definitely see similar stratigraphy along the Great Lakes shoreline. We've done a lot of projects like this up and down the Lake Michigan shore, and a lot of times what we're finding is that there is some kind of a confining layer that does not allow surface water to drain downward into the groundwater table. And so it's got to kind of find its way laterally along those confining layers. And in both cases, in both borings at the north and south end, you'll see that there's an aquitard layer, or a layer that does not allow the passage of groundwater easily in a vertical direction, that it's going to transmit it horizontally along that plane. And on in this boring here that you can see, boring 1, we encountered some, typical fine to medium sand up at the surface, and then down at about 3 feet, we ran into this clay silt layer. And this really is something that kind of holds water, if you will. And definitely you could correlate that by looking at the face of the bluff and seeing where the seepage was transmitted up to the face, and where the failures originated as well. So just keep that in mind as you look at the failures and the seepage patterns along the bluff face. That it's interesting to see that layer does exist, and it's fairly continuous. We noticed a slightly different stratigraphy, but still similar situation at the other end. The surface 5.5 feet was more of a sandy unit, and then we ran into a clay silt down at about 5.5 feet. And again, that layer allows water to transmit horizontally much easier than it does vertically. You're not going to pass water down into that layer, so or at least not substantially. So that water definitely travels along the surface of that aquitard and exits on the bluff face. And if you live in that area, I'm sure you're no stranger to the seepage. So that probably doesn't come as a surprise, but it's a good observation to make, and one that is needed when looking at the slope stability models and trying to calibrate those and make them represent what's happening out there. So we use a program called GeoStudio, and it allows us to model the existing soils. As I mentioned, we cut a cross section at the 3 areas that we looked at just now. Starting at the south end, again, this is boring 2, and so you'll see the different soil units, each provided with its own properties, which are important. The friction angle, the cohesion, the unit weight of those properties all factor into this model. And what we're doing here is we're trying to find the kind of path of least resistance. Where does that soil want to fail? What happens to the soils when they become saturated, and what is the factor of safety for that soil out there just kind of sitting on the bluff as it is right now. Now we know that at the north and south ends that we've had failures in the past, and a lot of times what happens in nature, or in areas that are not man manipulated, is that we end up with these failures, these kind of scarps, and that material will sit down here at the toe, and it will self-stabilize, if you will. in situations like this, along where the bluff is immediately adjacent to a body of water that can erode that soil away, this becomes an iterative process. And so you have this soil fail along this plane, and that soil ends up in a mound down at the toe of the bluff, and then the lake comes up and the waves take it away, and that process then repeats itself as the bluff will become steeper and steeper again as the toe is eroded, and then it will reach kind of critical mass and it will fail again. So this is not kind of a self-stabilizing situation where we'll get to a point where it'll kind of slow down and stop. It is going to keep happening. The lake exacerbates the situation being as high as it is, but even without the lake in this particular instance, because we have this seepage issue, this is going to keep happening. So what's interesting to note here, and I don't get too deep into this, but just for folks that are curious, I'll talk a little bit more about what factor safety it means and why that's relevant and how that's important to us when we're designing stabilizing slopes and designing slopes and trying to determine if they are safe to access and safe to travel, which is of course very important in this project. So I will go through the other two and then we'll talk about that. I think that's how this is set up. So this is the center section, again, very similar. This is sort of a hybrid of the two soil borings represented with this aquitard layer, that clay silt layer. You've got a high groundwater table up here. Groundwater slopes downward until it reaches this aquitard, and then you've got this seepage on the face. And this is really kind of what it looks like in the model versus real life. And then you see that seepage traveling down the face of the bluff and eventually hits the lake and goes on out. These soils at the face of the bluff become saturated. And so what happens is they lose their strength and then that soil sloughs off. And really what we're talking about here is the ability for this slide plane to develop. And that will happen when the force that's preventing that from happening is the friction of these materials acting upon one another in opposite directions. And so what happens when this gets saturated and this sloughing happens is that this frictional force drops and you still have the same amount of weight driving this mass towards the lake. But now you have a lower frictional force because of that saturation and what we call an increase in pore pressure. And so generally that is a force that will, or an event or a change that will induce this slide failure to develop and become active. And so again, we see the same thing at each of these cross sections. This looks a little different. It's just a little bit more sand up at the north end, but still the same situation where we've got this water mounding. It's a narrower, or I should say less thick aquitard here, but it still exists. And it's plenty thick to keep that water from moving vertically. So again, it travels along the top of that aquitard, exits higher up in the bluff in this situation, which is probably why the failure up there looks a little bit more severe. It's also a little bit of a taller bluff. And then you get the same effect with the slumping and the sloughing and the failure that has now come back into the road and impacted the paved surface. In all of these cases, this is just some graphics that I pulled from if anybody's really curious and learning more about this. Transportation Research Board issues these special reports, and this was one that was done quite a long time ago, but it's not changing. The facts are the facts, and this is a really kind of an interesting read if you're curious about it more. This upper right graphic here, I think, really explains this whole phenomenon well. But essentially, what you have is this rotational failure surface, and you saw that in the model that was developed. But that's your rupture surface, and so this soil kind of moves along that plane, and then you get this accumulation at the bottom, which is the soil sloughing to the toe, and so that's very similar to what we're seeing here. And there's some other kind of interesting graphics here that I don't need to go into too much detail on, but if we can circle back to this if anybody would like a more in-depth explanation. And before I get into the results, just wanted to talk a little bit again about what factor safety means in this situation. In its simplest terms, it's the resisting force divided by the driving force. So in the case of slope stability modeling, your resistive force again is the frictional forces that are acting on that slide plane. One is acting in the direction of the move, and one is acting in the opposite direction. Your driving force, of course, is the force that's acting in the direction of the move. And so if you have more resistive force than driving force, your factor of safety is going to be greater than 1. And in slope stability world, typically for embankments, for things that are, going to be used by the public to have a high, human health and safety risk, minimum required factors of safety are 1.5. And that's published by the Transportation Board. There's lots of other research I can show that where that is derived from. And in construction conditions or temporary conditions, 1.3 can be acceptable for a factor of safety, knowing that it's moving towards a long-term condition, but it's not something that's intended to be there forever. And so we kind of thought, in the case that we have right now, we're looking at, should the road be open, should it stay closed, that kind of thing. 1.3, I think in this situation would be acceptable for short-term condition. However, all of these factors of safety are at 1 or below 1, which means it's marginally stable. Any even remote increase in pore pressure, if you had a big rainstorm, that kind of thing, it could easily push that factor of safety below 1, which means that slope then becomes an active failure. And which is it's not, I think that bodes well to, the model being pretty well calibrated to what's going on out there, because that's exactly what we're seeing. And so we kind of get down, to the brass tacks of what we think we ought to do here. I think the, interim recommendation here is that the road really should be closed until there are some stabilization measures in place. Things that could be done to do this in the short term. I think one of the biggest benefits for your buck would be to deal with the drainage and the water that's on the backside of this road. That's really kind of the culprit in this case, is the fact that we just have so much water coming through here. It's uncontrolled seepage. It's blowing out on this side before it gets down to the water table. And if we can remove a lot of that water from passing through the soils underneath this road, I think we could do a lot to stabilize the bank. We still have, the toe erosion from the lake, from wave action, and just the fact that the slope is a steeper angle than what would be needed to maintain that 1.5 minimum factors of safety anyways. There would still need to be some work done down at the toe. But interim condition, I think if you wanted a first step, putting some drainage in, whether, there's a bunch of different ways that can happen, but that would be our recommendation for now, would be definitely to make sure that this road remains closed until it's safe to travel once again. I think it's going to circle back up to the overall picture, because I wanted to show, here we go, where this failure surfaces. That's that central one. And if you remember from that picture, that closer up picture where you're seeing that slide plane develop, it's probably not too far off from failing back further up into the road. Knowing that one is between your closure and this access point where folks are getting up in there to grab their stuff for the summer. That was a concern to us when we talked with Wayne and Joe about what access is going on there now, and just thought it was worth mentioning that. Before I get into kind of next steps or steps forward, I'll pause here. If anyone has any questions or wants to ask, what anything about the analysis or about what we've learned so far, what I've presented, I'd welcome questions at this point.
What's the elevation from the southern demarcation to the northern demarcation, or from the southern to the center to the northern demarcation? Is there any increase, or is it pretty much 600 feet all the way across?
It's pretty darn close. There might be, I'm just looking at the contours here. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I do see there's one contour that crosses the road here. There, I would say it's probably less than 3 feet difference from the south to the north. Yeah, you've got one contour here. There might be another one here. Yeah.
I guess it's fair to continue.
Okay.
Can we ask a question?
Hold on, yeah.
The drainage that's on the western side of the roadway seems inadequate because it has no real exit points. In 2019, 2 utilities went through there with basically using vibration to lay their cable and then also the water pressure methodology to lay pipeline. And there's really no more culvert there at all, no functioning culvert. How much pressure does that put on the roadway?
Are you talking just the installation of those utilities, the fact that they're there?
Yes, well, it's a two-phase, that installation and then also the culvert itself doesn't take much of the water away. That's not, you don't see any movement of the water in that culvert, hardly at all.
Are we talking about this culvert here? Is that what we're looking at?
We're looking at the culvert that runs parallel to the roadway.
Is it a ditch line or is it?
The ditch.
Yeah,
I guess
there's a
it's
ditch
line.
there. I guess I wasn't familiar with the culvert.
It's a ditch line, but it doesn't seem to have a culvert. It crosses under the road to relieve any of its flow.
I think Carly said that there are no drainage features, no culvert pipes from the shore side under the road into the bay. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yeah, we didn't really.
That's our understanding as well.
Yeah, we didn't really look at this from a drainage perspective when we were out there doing our field visit. It was mostly, making some observations about where the water was coming from, and how, just the fact that it was seeping through the road. So I can't really answer that definitively, but it didn't, we didn't see anything that made us believe that there was a, culvert passing under the road that discharged out into the lake or anything like that.
We can confirm that there, in this area, there are no crossroad culverts.
Okay, so yeah, Wayne confirms there's no crossroad drainage structures or pipe or culvert of any type. Okay, so I guess let's go on to the next portion of the presentation.
Really just got one slide left here, talking about some considerations. I know one of the things that Wayne and Joe and us, GEI discussed was this access ramp at the south end. It sounded like there was some strong interest in having this restored to allow for folks to get their shore stations in. And one of the things that we talked about was, if the road commission is going to be working towards a solution that involves stabilizing this slope and included something along the lines of, riprap or stone or something to stabilize the toe, that access be coordinated, or the restoration of that access be coordinated with the stabilization measures, so that there is not discontinuity between that restoration and what the road commission may want to do to stabilize the road. And I'll speak a little more specifically to this just as a scenario that could happen. But let's say, this is filled back up and a lot of, some riprap is added on the lakeside to stabilize that. What we would want to see, from our perspective as engineer, is that this side also be riprapped before this fill was placed back in here, in the event that someday, you still have access for the water to kind of wash up this area. So we definitely would want to make sure that this part of the embankment was protected as well. So just a note there that there should be some consideration in how that ties together. My understanding is that there are some efforts being made currently to permit restoration of that. So it's just recommendation to the board there. And then just, of course, the fact that, this restoration will require a permit from Eagle and the Army Corps for placing fill below the ordinary high water mark. So with that, that's kind of the end of our presentation. This is really kind of what we found. Next step in the project here would be to move to, interim design and long-term design. Need to have those conversations yet with Wayne and Joe, but this is kind of bringing you all up to speed on where we're at currently.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yes.
Great. Carlin, can you tell me, I'm assuming that what we're going to be looking at as far as corrective action is probably an infiltration gallery on the west side of Bluff Road at some sort of elevation where it'll intercept above the confining unit. Is that more or less accurate where we're headed?
Yeah, it could be. That's definitely an option. There are a number of things that can be done. You know, you can put in some vertical drains that take that water right down to the permanent groundwater table and kind of bypass that layer. You could do things, you know, I think the concern, and the thing we probably want to look into a little bit more, is at the north end where that confining layer is within 3 feet of the surface. You know, do you have room to do that and still pass under the road without, you know, getting too close to the road cross section itself? So those are things that we need to consider, but there are definitely, you know, different ways to get the water either down or across the road. I'll call it mechanically, or, you know, pipe it that way without having to rely on the ground to transmit it itself.
Okay, and then another question is, from the standpoint of the amount of water, you know, groundwater, or actually, I guess it's confined groundwater that's above the confining unit. Can you tell whether or not, you said that it was fairly continuous north to south based upon the borings that you did. Can you tell whether or not that's a regional groundwater geology issue, or is that primarily focused related to some of the surface water infiltration that's happening from some of the stormwater basins that are up gradient?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of a two-part answer here, maybe two-part question. I'll address the geology piece first. So the geology here is very consistent with what we see across the lakeshore on Lake Michigan, even all the way down to, you know, Muskegon area. You see generally in areas where you have these slope failures that are caused by seepage, it's generally because there is a confining layer that's transmitting, you know, surface runoff that's infiltrated partway down into the ground and is seeping out the face because it just can't reach the long-term groundwater table before it exits the bluff face. You know, if this was not a bluff, eventually it would make it down there. It'd just take a lot longer. So I think that's kind of, from a geology perspective, this is not uncommon. You know, we weren't surprised to see this. It was just interesting to note the surface, you know, kind of the water storage features that existed upstream directly correlated to the areas with the worst damage that the bluff was experiencing. And you know, I don't think that's really a surprise when you kind of really sit back and think about it, but you know, those areas are pretty easy to pick out when you look across here and notice whether it's man-made or whether it's natural features, the drainage and the surface water is concentrated in the areas where we definitely see more erosion and more sloughing and slumping on the bluff face.
Yeah, that's the way it looked to me too. Can you tell whether or not, considering the porosity and transmissivity of the soil structures below the confining unit, whether or not it would make sense to have perforations throughout that area to allow for greater transmissivity, or will the head pressure from the lake permit venting of that water, even if a vertical transmissive conduit was provided there?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. That's something we can definitely analyze. You know, we have the ability to include, you know, seepage and transmissivity in different models, in a different type of model within the same software. And that can definitely be done. We can look at, you know, how much, you know, essentially how much can the ground take. A vertical drain system is not going to be as effective at absorbing large storm events as something that would directly vent that water up to the lake. But it would definitely help, you know, capture that water and send it downward and manage some of the groundwater that's coming at you that's not necessarily related specifically to wet weather events. So a lot of times, you know, in certain situations, it may be advantageous to utilize, you know, both a horizontal pipe system and a vertical system, but that's something that we would definitely need to look into further before we could answer that question wholly.
I promise my junior geologic engineer questions are over.
They're good ones.
I have a landowner's question, if I may.
Okay, why don't we individuals, I guess, directing towards Skylar, identify yourselves, I guess, so she knows who she's responding to and we know who she's responding to.
Yeah, my name is Ron Peterson. I own about 150 feet of frontage within this restricted area, just south of the HOA property. And you didn't indicate taking any borings there, but I assume that water will always seek the lowest point of resistance. So if you shore up one part of the bluff, are you just gonna direct that water to the next lowest point? And question two is from a homeowner's perspective, is shoring up the toe of that bluff gonna do any good in the long term if that groundwater from above isn't redirected first?
Oh, very good questions. Generally, it's not advised to only address one of the issues. So I don't think that we would not recommend a system that does not include some sort of drainage component to it. The idea would be to capture that water before it goes any further downstream. You know, you capture what you can. You can't capture all the groundwater, but you know, capture what's in excess and what's, you know, causing the damage to the bluff adjacent to the road. You know, if that groundwater system, groundwater capture system, drainage system, what have you, is truncated, you know, let's just say, for instance, as the project stops at this South Bay area, just for the sake of conversation. And, you know, I can understand your concern would be, you know, is that water then coming to my property? And in this case, you know, we capture what we could, but I mean, without doing the hydraulics, I can't tell you certainly, but it wouldn't seem logical to me that that water that's captured and put in a place like the lake or put further down in the groundwater table, which would be, and when I talk, and let me flip back up to this other, this photo here. So when I talk about, you know, having it come down, it's coming down into this much, you know, this lower unit here. We wouldn't truncate that vertical drainage, you know, up here somewhere and then let it still kind of come out and down. Even if it's sand, it's still going to move horizontally better than it's going to move vertically. So if you have a system like that, you're going to try to reach all the way down to where that groundwater table is and intersect it there. So unless your property is, you know, what is this, almost 20 feet lower than the road surface and the ditch that the water would be collected in, you're probably not going to see, you probably see an advantage, if anything.
Okay.
Just one more question. This is the junior geologic engineer again. My name is Joe Kwan. I'm the attorney working with the Homeowners Association. I'm assuming that next step is probably preliminary design and trying to get some cost estimates.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so I think, you know, Wayne and Joe can speak to this a little bit, how they want to execute this, but our task right now, what we're authorized for is kind of through this level of deliverable. And, you know, if that is what everybody wants to move forward with, our next step would be to look at potential alternatives and price those out.
I guess, Brad, that's your understanding of the deliverables as of now with basically they have satisfied, or we've contracted with them to do it this way.
Yes, and we are, obviously, the full detail report, yes, coming, but this is what she has for us right now, and we'll have the rest of it. But then the next step is for us to determine, you know, what we're looking at, cost estimates, getting suggestions from them as far as what our options and what our costs are.
Okay. What is the timeline approximately for the final report where we'll have the final documentation that based on this?
You should expect that in the next few weeks.
Okay. So I guess then is what the board needs to do at this point, I guess, is give direction to manager and engineer then to go into discussion, I guess, as far as costs and the next phase of this operation with engineering firm.
We have, unless things have changed, we had a fee table from GEI for a phase two. Phase two being the review of the short-term remedial measures to mitigate the future erosion, including cost estimates and permitting requirements. Phase two would be estimated at $21,326.
With GEI?
Correct.
Okay. So I guess we should probably discuss that. We can talk about that and feelings of the board.
We got to move forward at some point, so.
Seems a certain degree of reasonableness there, I guess. It's not an shocking, outrageous number.
No,
Okay, I think there's consensus with the board that to move forward with that would be advisable at, you know, the earliest possible convenience.
We have that in our budget.
We can have to.
We'll find. Bill and I will sit down, we'll find.
Okay.
Yes. We just need a motion and that to say yes, go forth, and we shall.
To engage in phase two.
Yes. And a top, and a estimate, add an estimate of how much again?
For 21,326. Carlin, before we jump forward onto that, Carlin, you had mentioned that there might be, from what we know now and from what we were seeing and what we were looking at, there might be an advantage to be looking at both task 2 and task 3. Task 3 also being the alternative analysis and preliminary permitting evaluation for permanent slope stabilization.
Yeah, that's correct. I think in this case that a temporary solution and then a permanent solution might not be the most cost-effective way to do this, especially given the turnaround time that we're seeing with Army Corps and Eagle joint permit applications right now. That we'd probably want to get the ball rolling on all of that and then really be able to have, you know, the advantage of looking at both a permanent and if there was a temporary solution that could be, you know, built upon the other. So for instance, maybe in the interim, you know, we manage the groundwater as best we can and move forward with looking at a long-term stabilization along the toe, knowing that we're moving in the right direction and also stabilizing the surface of the bluff by reducing that seepage. And we can look at what that does in the model. Simply, I think if everybody can still see my screen here, what that does is, you know, we artificially lower this groundwater in the model and show that it's kind of stabilized and in what, you know, we would predict that condition, that groundwater condition to be in, and then recalculate what that factor of safety is. And that can help us a lot to determine what the potential to move forward with something like that would be, knowing that then, you know, the toe would be protected later on down the line. So those are some things that we can look at rather than, you know, and I think along with that, you know, the other thing you'd look at this point would be, of course, the repair of the areas that are already failed that would need to be restored to restore traffic. So those things, I think if we can look at all as one big picture package, I think we'll.
So what we're hearing is there's a phase 2 and phase 3, and it'll be a time effective and cost effective by combining those this time.
Correct.
That's right.
And then there's ultimately a phase 4, but so phase 2 and 3, which what we're looking at and recommending, our estimate was for $37,292.
On top of the 21 or collectively.
That's 2 and 3 combined.
So we're talking 37, whatever that number.
292. So
More or less.
More or less.
Is the homeowners association paying part of this, half of this or part of this, or are we bearing this all ourselves right away?
Apparently at this time, it appears we are bearing the burden of this.
And we're primarily concentrating on our right of way.
Yeah, we're just worried, the right of way is what we're concerned about.
Ultimately, I think there will be that conversation, yes.
Well, when you're talking about the toe, when you're talking about riprap and where it comes in and out of our right of way.
And where the water is coming from.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess then we would need a motion, I guess, to authorize the expenditure to consolidate.
Motion to authorize approximately 37,000 more or less for phases 2 and 3.
Support. A motion and support. Any other concerns or discussion? How about a roll call?
Underwood,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Mauser.
Yes. Wayne or Brad, I guess, is there further comment or discussion we need to have with DEI?
I'm sure Wayne will be in touch with them in the next few days to get some stuff straightened out, and then we'll move forward to begin, you know, moving into the next phase. Biggest thing is gonna be, you know, obviously we're waiting on the final report so we can get some better ideas, and when they're fully ready, we'll sit down with them and begin discussion as far as how we're gonna approach it and make sure there's no other concerns that are coming up after we see that.
Okay, I guess we can say, appreciate your time, Carlin, and we're looking forward to moving this as rapidly as possible.
Can we ask a question? With this is Mike Skursky from the HOA. We're presently looking at permits from Eagle and Army Corps. Would it be still advantageous to go ahead with our plan to tow it with some rather large stone and then riffraff it? At this time, because this permit probably is an amendment to an existing, we probably can get it done and the work done yet this fall.
Are we talking about the access ramp specifically?
No, we're talking about basically the shoreline.
The whole thing?
Well, our 350, yes.
Okay,
we're the northernmost portion, and then there's, other property owners.
I think rather than respond to that offhand, maybe a little time to consider that, I guess, Wayne and Carlin, where you can.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, if possible, if you have the permit application, if we can see a copy of that and just get an idea of what the details are, we'd be happy to take a look.
It seems like kind of an open-ended question that I think I would be reluctant to answer in an offhand manner, I guess. So if we can share the documentation and the specifics of just exactly where and what we're talking about, then I think they'll be able to give you a much better response. Anything else, or can we allow our consultant to move on with her evening?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you very much, Carlin.
Yep, no problem. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
And you can leave if you need to.
I think my kids are ready for dinner, so I'm going to do that. Bye-bye.
You guys, if you want to leave, you jump out. We still got a long ways to go tonight, so.
Item 8, revision of board rules regarding remote participation.
Okay, included in your packet, you have the new remote meeting policy. This was drafted in conjunction with our attorney. And basically what this is doing, the main change, doesn't change our remote meetings for commissioners' participation. What it does change is the fact that from this point forth, once these motion is passed and these rules are changed, is that we will not be accepting public commentary unless the people are present. So if we have appointments or we have public commentary that needs to be addressed, they have to be present to do it rather than having to go through the Zoom. We will still be broadcasting, but we will not be taking feedback through it.
I would move that we adopt a revision of the board rules regarding remote participation as presented.
Support. We have motion and support. Any further discussion or comment? Hearing none.
I'm sorry.
Me.
Okay, thanks.
Let's keep the ball rolling. Let's give it a roll call.
Gilman.
Yep.
Lehman.
Yes.
Underwood.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Louder.
Yes. I purchased the budgeted 2022 trucks.
Okay, we got two things here. The first one is fairly straightforward, so let's look at, we received bids for trucks from Western Star, Peterbilt, and International. International did not meet the standard spec that we require. Western Star and Peterbilt did. Western Star came in $1,000 less. In addition, their upgrade to give us a little more horsepower was $1,000 instead of $2,500. So our recommendation at this point is to continue purchasing Western Stars for the next 3 plow trucks, which we are talking about ordering now. That will be ready for November of 2022.
Why, I keep getting lost on this. Where we had Peterbilt, we had Western Star.
Peterbilt, we quit,
Yeah.
this is this is gonna be our third year. with
Okay,
this.
that's all about their year with the Western
Stars. Yes, and we're finding much better success with the Western Stars. The problem we have with Peterbilt's is the electrical failures that we've had with them, and the fact that if anything has to be done, it's to Grand Rapids.
Right.
Western Stars right
Yeah,
there.
we don't go down and see.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will need a motion
For that.
To purchase the 3 trucks.
For the amount more or less.
Whatever the amount is, yeah.
$387,000. Okay.
And we have a support from
Yes,
Carl. Any other question, comment, discussion?
well, it's got a better warranty too.
It does. Roll call if you please.
Service. Yeah.
Hayden,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Melvin.
Yes.
Okay, now the second thing is what was added to your packet here. This is a recommendation for an upgrade from our fleet manager. The first problem we have with this is because of the costs of what they're saying from truck and trailer to upfit, the cost has gone up 10% since last year. So at this point, they are higher than what my deal is, but they have submitted paperwork to have the my deal prices increased. And chances are pretty good that that's going to happen at some point because everything is going up. But what we would like on this is a conditional approval that we get documentation from truck and trailer to show that, yes, the purchase is the additional cost for the parts that we need to have, not something that they're padding in with their additional cost in labor, because the labor portion of it, we did not expect an increase of 10% for labor. We expect it potentially for parts, but once we receive that justification and the documentation that the cost has gone up, then we would like the authority to order it, because as it is now, like I say, these are going to be ready in November. And if we wait too much longer, we could be into 2 plow seasons from now. Or we could be a little bit for this. Yes, and it's a conditional on us getting the documentation from truck and trailer.
Like that motion.
Okay, we have motion, we have support.
I'll support again.
We have support from Carl. Any other questions or comment? Hearing none, I guess roll call, please.
Underwood,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gilman.
Yep.
Lehman.
Yes.
Bowser.
Yes. Item J, 4 Mile and Hammond Roundabout.
This was already approved at our special meeting, so we have started moving forward, but because it is a contracted work, we forgot to add the more or less. Carrie has asked that we pass a resolution to just simply add more or less to the cost so that we are covered.
I will make that resolution. Or that motion.
Yeah.
For the support.
We have motion, Gilman support Underwood. To add
Say it again.
those 3 important words.
More.
Gilman, right?
Yeah.
Gilman and Underwood.
Underwood, okay.
Those 3 important words.
Brown,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood.
Yes.
Melvin.
Yes.
No. It's just three.
Kind of on that note, I know there was some overages on that concerning East Bay portion. Have they resolved that?
Their portion of it, they approved.
They approved. Okay, so everybody's happy.
Yes.
Well, they were actually quite happy about it. I got a call from.
Really?
Back, yeah.
They're happy that.
Well, no, I mean, they're happy that.
They were still able to get it
Yeah,
done.
that they were still doing good done.
Oh, okay. K, the union contract, which staff recommends closed session. So to do that,
We would make a motion, we go into closed session for the purposes of discussing the union contract with the Teamsters.
and we have support. I guess we can do this on this.
How am I missing the sport out? You did?
And if we leave, you don't have to move, right?
No, we still have to
Oh, you do.
go.
So, okay, we have motion and support. Can we do this with voice vote?
Gilman,
Yes.
Lehman, Underwood.
Yeah.
Brown.
Yes.
Ballard.
Yes.
Okay, you don't get your way.
She wants.
It is what it is, Bill.
Chairman.
You don't get your way, Bill.
Okay.
So,
Yes, please.
not totally inappropriate, not even part of the agenda, but Brad, when he come out and he visited with us, so there's 4 property owners out there. There's Joe Roick, who I believe has sent a communication.
He did.
Myself, Mr. Peterson, and then the homeowners association is obviously represented with legal counsel, but Brad has all of our contacts and we're here. We're willing to work with you folks just to keep this moving forward, so.
Yes,
Feel free to reach out at any time.
Any
Any permits we get, we'll certainly share with you guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we come out of closed session.
We have support.
Support.
We have motion and support. That's Brown.
Coming out of closed session.
Come out of closed session.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gilman.
Yep.
Bowser.
Yes. All right. We are out of closed session, and I guess the discussion is union contract.
I make the motion to approve the union, the Teamsters union contract as presented by our manager in closed session.
I'll second it. Second. Any other conversation or discussion or questions? Hearing none, I guess we just need to take a vote.
Underwood,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gilman.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
Bowser.
Yes. Okay, number 7, informational.
Nope. We have 2 blue sheet items.
Oh.
And those are bills. So
Pass right past it. All right, yep, no, okay, all of them.
Yeah, so the first one is we recently had a retiree under the defined benefit plan, who in his planning thought he had the required months of service. When he did file his application, that triggers an audit at MERS, and they go back through his entire service period and make sure that he did receive eligible credits for each period. Well, they found 3 periods back in 1997 when he was on short-term disability, so that kind of put him under the required 25 years by 1 month. So MERS, we requested MERS to do an actuarial determination of what that 1 month would cost. And that came out to $1,225. And that'll be paid by the employee to purchase that 1 month. That'll get him to his 25 years of full retirement.
Now, that's paid by the employee.
That's paid by the employee.
What is our, I mean, I don't see a problem with this, okay, but I mean, what is our ultimately, how does that affect our funding of that remaining defined?
It's already funded in
So-
a defined benefit plan.
Okay, so.
Yeah,
Our
we've been
portion is
paying
funded,
normal
he's
cost
he's
per-
just picking up what he would have had to pay back in
Yeah.
97 had
He's-
whoever was around in
he's paying off
97
those
known that.
Right. And had he known this issue, he
He
would have
would've
worked
waited.
another month.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's.
No, and I've seen this,
unfortunate.
I've done this before where
Right.
Yeah.
So it was an amicable solution.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
We'll need a motion.
I'll make
a
motion
to accept the
To approve the resolution.
resolution for retirement.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have support? We have support from Carl Brown. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I guess. Call roll.
Brown,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Bowser.
Yes. Item M.
The next one, so under this process, MERS was doing a little housekeeping and saw we needed a resolution. That way, our manager, whoever the manager is, can sign any kind of documents.
I'd make the motion authorizing the authorized signatory as being our manager, Brad Kuzinski.
We have support.
Yes.
Okay. We're Brown. Call the roll, please.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Gilman.
Yes.
Okay. Now we go to item 7, informational items 8, Paradise property purchase. All right.
Okay, I have given you 4 or 2 double-sided sheets of a potential secondary location. The one that is out in detail with the ortho photo, there's both sides. One is the first location, which is behind the Paradise Township Hall. The second one is the adjacent parcel, which is owned by the Kingsley Schools. They do not have a path out from that parcel except for to go through the other school that's there. So anything they did up there, they would have to have access to it if they were going to try and do anything. They are not interested in putting their school at that location. If they are going to put a school here, they're actually interested in putting it to the south of our original location that we had, but south of the Paradise Township Hall. So they own the next parcel below that. So we would like to go to the schools and start negotiating the potential to purchase 20 acres from them for the location of our new Kingsley facility.
To add a little context to this, I guess. Carl and Wayne and Brad. right,
Yes.
Met with the mayor and the manager of the village of Kingsley to originally discuss water and sewer access. And based on that conversation that they were having, the suggestion came to look into this, and because of the innumerable delays that we've experienced on the other parcel, it was suggested that the school may be interested in selling. So we haven't had any discussion with the school.
Right.
They haven't said, they haven't tendered an offer even.
They don't even know, they don't know at this point
Yeah.
that.
But we can tell other folks, give them.
Yeah, so the question is to approach the school, if they would be willing and what cost might be. And one of the benefits of this is that it's within the village of Kingsley, correct?
It is.
So that, so we'd be dealing with the village, and the village would be basically, I'll use the word compelled to provide water and sewer since it's within the village. I mean, then it's not a question of
It's
whether.
better for them anyway. Yeah.
The advantage to the situation also for this parcel is the sewer and water line run right through this parcel.
Oh, good.
So all we need is a tap off and it's all gravity feed on the sewer. So we don't need to have a lift station, a mini lift station, which is what we would have needed to have at our parcel to get it up the hill to flow out. So by putting it here, we're right on a gravity line. We don't have to worry about it. In the water, I mean, you're right off the water tower. They did a pressure test. It's 85 PSI right there, which will peel the skin off your back. I mean,
We would
it's-
have to have a pressure reducing valve in it.
Yeah,
but
so-
that's minor, that's chump change.
There's sufficient water service in the village to do things like we want to do here, but there's been problems.
There is, they are currently using less than 50% of their capacity of either
On the-
water
on the
or
sewer.
sewer.
When the sewer plant went in, they had money left over from that grant that would actually have reverted back. And they approached USDA rural development and said, can we oversize our facility? So when that facility was built, it was built twice as large as what was necessary at the time. So, and then there's a 12-inch water main coming down that hill. So, and it's right, we would be the first half off of it pretty much.
Yeah, so overall, it's something, it's a, depending on the cost from the schools, that's really the biggest thing. The path out from that parcel, which heads out to 113, there is a small parcel which is currently owned by the village. They got it and got it cleaned up through a brownfield credit that they had. So if they were to sell it now, number one, it's too narrow for really doing anything. But number two, if they were to find a way to sell it, they would have to pay back the brownfields. But if they give it to another governmental agency, it's just continuous use as government, so.
And are we gonna be sharing access with the schools?
No, at this point, it would be just our access in. Because the schools, once we use this parcel, the schools have no need to come in
Way
through
too
there.
far
at all.
down the hill. It's down the hill.
113.
And,
Right.
and
Oh,
not-
okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it's got a nice bowl to it, which is also a good thing because it's got enough embankment heading up all the way around where the building would sit, that it would direct the sound straight up instead of out. So it would keep it in a quieter environment as far as disturbing of neighbors.
Well, and I think earlier you were talking about the railroad being there, the
Right.
possibility.
And
of
there's
the spur.
eventually, yeah, we're lower than the railroad, so depending on, how successful the rail ends up being with bringing people up here. They want to try it, whatever, but it's an MDOT owned rail, so it's something that we could potentially look at having our salt shipped here by rail in the future, just because of the cost of what salt has gone through over the last several years. So, and that's, you know, off into the distance, but it's,
Oh, yeah, the rail's still active.
yeah.
Once a
So
week
it's
or
off in the
once-
distance. It's
whatever.
not something we'd be talking about for this facility right now, but it is a possibility.
Does anybody see any negatives here? I don't. I guess my feeling is that due to all the delays and with the township, and seemingly it could be a couple, 3 months before they come to any conclusion, that we should certainly look into this, and I'd even say with great vigor.
Yeah, I'm good. Okay. We will start moving forth and start making contact with Kingsley Schools then. Okay.
Okay. Managers.
Well, there's a couple of things. We have been doing exceptionally well filling positions recently. We've been very fortunate. On Tuesday of next week, we are starting 10 new employees, 4 of which are interns. We also have filled except for 1 position in the mechanics and 1 field person. So we will be back up to nearly fully staffed after Tuesday, which is a very good thing. We've had a few people that have been injured on workers' comp, and thanks to Larry, he's kept them busy doing some GIS work for us, and they've actually put into effect a couple of new applications for us that have benefited by the use of the GIS. We tracked all of our street sweeping and we tracked all of our brining, and we're still going to finish up the brining, but all of that was done in conjunction with our GIS. And we also did an IVR, which is we aren't quite done with that, are we?
We're not quite. It
Yeah.
should finish up on Tuesday.
Yeah, and that is a gravel road assessment. So they have done all of our gravel roads to determine what type of work needs to be done on all of them, and that should be finishing up next week, all using the GIS system. So I thought it was important to say, yes, we are already getting use out of it. So we also, you know, with the new employees, we have the, like I say, the 4 interns. So a couple of them are going to be working with engineering, and a couple of them are going to be spending time between traffic services and Larry to do some more GIS stuff. However, unfortunately, we did just lose an employee this week. Our new engineer, Rob Sullivan, had to take a job back up into the UP to be closer to his parents. His dad's quite a bit older.
Yeah, worse places to work.
Yeah, so he's got a job working for MDOT in the Newberry office. He's gonna stay with us until June 22nd, but we did lose him, and he was a good engineer. We definitely appreciate the time he gave us, but because of the conditions with his family, he needed to move on. So we also are gonna be starting very quickly here in the next month, what the back crew is calling Bring Your Admin to Work Day, so that we can get some of our admin people to understand what it is the field ops crews do. That helps us as far as with the front staff being able to see the work and understanding when people are calling in to complain. So we're hoping that's going to be a very good cross training, and also get some of them up to see what it is that happens here, to kind of build a more of a camaraderie and a team atmosphere here. So we got that. I talked to you about it at the all employee meeting sometime at the end of June. And then the last thing is, we are making some progress on the local cost sharing plan. It's taking a little bit because we had to pull Larry off to do the brining and the sweeping and the IBR, but we are still working forward. So we are going to be probably within the next 2 weeks calling Jason and Bill back to sit down with us and start talking more about how we're going to deal with local cost shares in the future.
Speaking of brining, I just want to ask a quick question. Township participation on that being as higher, was it?
It's most of them went with the new product. 3 townships decided to stick with the old product. And so we'll see. I guess, you know, it's a learning curve for us. The companies doing a good job. They're faster than Beckman was. I mean, they're flying. So it was all we could do to keep ahead of them, but we are gonna see how it lasts and, you know, what type of results we get from it. But the guy who was here from Great Lakes Fluoride, who's doing the work, said, you know, this is the type of thing that even next year, you're gonna still have some of that residual material in the ground, and you will have lower dust. And the more often you use it over the years, the dust levels will continue to decrease. So, and we'll see. We're gonna be doing some definite data collection on it to make sure. And that is all I have tonight.
Questions for manager? Questions?
No, I think.
Yes, ones.
Yeah, I'm done.
I've got a quick one here, I guess, on the June 2nd LAG meeting is still Zoom. What's our plans to, will we be able to stop doing that?
That is the last Zoom one that we have.
So the ones in the future.
From
after that,
everything after June 2nd will
the
be.
round 2 will be
going out in face-to-face mode.
Okay. Not that I find anything wrong with Zoom meetings. I won't comment on the ineffectuality of them or the lunacy of it all, but that's okay.
Meeting, but not meeting.
I've got another thing. I did get a call from an individual about the bridges on River Road. Apparently had a relative who was
Yes.
on the board. And there were some commemorative plaques on those. I guess on the first bridge, it had already been demoed. He wanted to know if they could get the plaque back for memorabilia. I guess the first bridge had been gone, so we don't know whether those plaques on those or not, but the other bridge, I guess we made a commitment that those would be preserved for them. And I guess is what I'm suggesting here in a roundabout way of a very short problem really is that we make sure we add to our specifications and our bid packs that contractors are obligated to, in the pre-construction or startup, to identify any that might be there, and that their responsibility is to salvage those and save them and turn them over. Because I guess we really don't know on the first bridge whether there are any there or not, other than it got torn apart and nobody knows nothing about nothing. So just to add,
On bridge 2, the one we're gonna be doing, we did fine.
Okay, so it was, I guess to document that as part of, as part of the contract documents, that it is instilled upon that so that we don't have that problem in the future. And I guess another thing I've got to ask about is pothole patching. A few years ago, we looked at there was a machine called a Python. And it was supposed to be just, the best thing since sliced bread as far as doing pothole patching. So it was more than just, blow out the water, throw some stuff in there, drive the tire over it and pack it down. It was a multi-use tool. Anyway, at the time it was supposedly looking at the engineering had not been worked out, and it really wasn't quite ready for us to make a commitment to buy. So I guess my question is somewhat broad-based. Have there been other pieces of equipment that have matriculated to the point where they are reliable, or is there, are we up to snuff technology-wise on how we pothole patch? Can we do a better job?
We use hot asphalt during the season. During the winter and non-asphalt season, we use probably about the best quality cold patch we can find. So I've seen them. I've seen them at a couple of shows. We had one person that was going to come up and do a demo, and he never showed because we wanted to.
The machine broke down.
So I mean, we would definitely be looking at it. We haven't seen any more up-to-date information since 2 years ago because we haven't been to any of the shows to meet the vendors. But if we can find somebody that has it, we would definitely take a look at it.
And I guess broader, other than just, a piece of equipment, as lead follower, get out of the way. If we can, where is the technology better better methods of cleaning and drying the holes, new emulsions,
Typically what,
treat them and compact them better?
typically what it is it heats the outside edge.
Yeah.
So that you've got a better
Bonds.
bond of what you're putting down. From what I've seen, they are very, very slow and very, very costly to deal with.
Well,
But that's been, you know, it's
supposedly.
been several years since I've actually seen one in operation.
I mean, there's cost and value, and it seems like on many of our roads, some of the areas that we look at, we're 90% of the roads in pretty good shape, and then you've got this area that's kind of going to hell. And now you see a pothole patch and another one on top of the other two, and pretty soon, now it's a real sore thumb, where if we initiate a program where maybe we're going in there and spending that little extra time and money to more effectively do those, if, you know, but it's a matter of technology and maybe a little bit of imagination on somebody's part.
Well, we have discussed, you know, a couple different things and a couple different options. One of the biggest things is getting somebody other than our staff that can do some sort of like a Durapatch type thing. Because Durapatching, the old Durapatching is very, very old technology. The new stuff that people do, the contractors are doing, they're using polymerized emulsions that are substantially more durable. They last longer, they give, they've got a lot of elasticity to them. And that is probably what we would be looking at in one of those areas, because you can basically chip seal a small area and make it nice.
It's a beautiful thing when you have to offer a warranty.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta make it last.
Yeah, so.
I guess I'm saying we need to, you know, stay on the cutting edge of technology, not to the point where we're experimenting and having something come back and hit us in the face that really stunk really bad, but not so far that everybody else is doing it first. I guess.
I think pothole patching is hard work.
Oh, yeah.
It's, but there's no substitute for doing stuff like really old fashioned ways, saw cuts,
Cut it out.
removal, tack.
Yep.
You can make beautiful patches.
You can, absolutely. And the nice, this Python, you know, it was a truck that had it went out there, it would cut, it would grind, it would blow it out, heat it up, put the mix in, screed it, compact it. You know, in theory, it was magical.
A lot of times, you know, you're better off at that point finding somebody in a smaller asphalt equipment type thing who can actually go in and remove and replace and do it with the right equipment, just because it usually ends up being more cost effective to just go in. And now what they do a lot of times, in addition to, you know, the tack and everything else, is they're actually got sealant that they put around the cut edges to
I think you
glue it
need
all
that.
together. And so it's, yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and Jay is learning a lot about a lot. So he is our research guy for that stuff, and he will be keeping up with a lot.
And I think we can, you know, there doesn't have to be one fix for everything. I mean, it seems like we can look at it too. Like I said, we just don't want to be doing it the same old way just because, well, we're doing it the same old way.
Right. No, we have.
We can lead.
Yep.
Not follow or get out of the way. You're gonna cost a little more. Anybody else?
Just.
And I guess have we sort of rolled B and C in together? Anybody?
Yeah.
Future comments, questions, future agenda items? I think.
The other thing I have as far as the commissioner's comments is I appreciate the work that you put into the Teamsters contract.
It was long.
It was
longer than it needed
It was
to be.
interesting, and I was surprised they didn't take the first one, but you made it work, and that's good. Also, I you know, family comes from a workman's comp background. You know, my dad was chairman of the state of Michigan Appeals Board for like 12 years, once upon a time, and comp is kind of one of those things where. And then also being a business owner, I paid workman's comp unhappily, you know. So working with Larry, I mean, honestly, turning a bunch of potential comp recipients into coders, that's great, man.
They're enjoying it.
They're doing it. That is great. So, I love that. That's all I've got to say.
I guess that would take us to our last public comment.
Any person may make an advance appointment with the board regarding the road commission topics for a regular or special meeting in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. If an appointment is made, the topic will be an agenda item. The following applies to public comments. Please state his or her name and address. Topic must be relevant to the road commission. Individuals are allowed to speak once for up to 3 minutes on a single topic, which may be extended by the chair. A group addressing the board requires a designated spokesperson who may speak up to 10 minutes. The board will not act on any item from the public that is not on the agenda. For remote access users, if you wish to participate, please raise your hand. For Collins, we can unmute you. If you wish to speak, say yes.
Hey, Larry, is there anyone on the line that has given any indication of such?
Doesn't appear. Yeah.
Or they're off on some, it's a holiday week.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, I guess don't bring anybody in the audience who wishes to
He just needs to talk to
participate
me,
in the second.
Adjourn.
Hearing none, we didn't hear that.
Okay.
I knew he was gonna do
Second.
Everybody got a sign.
Okay. Everybody sign.
You said, okay.
Above your name.